Okay, let's talk some books. I'm here to talk to you about what I've been reading in the last week and getting into my April TBR. So, this week has been really interesting. I've adjusted my filming schedule slightly, so there may be some things that kind of seem off in terms of the timing of what I'm reading versus when you're seeing this video, especially if you join me in my Monday reading sprints. Basically, all you need to know is that I'm filming this video about 2 weeks before you're actually seeing it. But that doesn't really matter for the sake of reviewing and talking about these books. So let me just go ahead and get into it. I finished 3 books this week, since my last wrap up video anyway, which I'm rather surprised by, but really happy about. And the first book I'm going to talk about is Lust for Life by Irving Stone. This is a biographical novel exploring the life of Vincent van Gogh. I did not realize until finishing this book that it was actually written 40 years after his death. So the author did spend quite a bit of time researching information about his life, going through all the letters that he and his brothers shared, as well as talking to some of the people who lived with and knew Vincent van Gogh and were still alive at the time that he was researching this book. So I think that's pretty cool. I have to say, I really enjoyed this book a lot more than I thought I was going to. The writing in this was very good, very clear. There were times where the dialogue was a little stilted, but I thought he had a very clear message. He did a really good job of basically trying to get you inside Vincent van Gogh's mind. He was very honest as an author in his afterwards about where he did just kind of have to fill in the gaps, make things up, versus, where he tried to get information from other people. And overall, I think he really attempted to do a respectful job of showing the struggles that Van Gogh went through in life and in his own personal mind, in his relationships with other people, with his own family. And I think he tried to be respectful of everyone in all the various circumstances and really be sort of sympathetic towards Vincent's life, whether or not you agreed with all the decisions he made during his life. I definitely learned a lot more about certain aspects of his life that I didn't know about. And I think the most important thing that I walked away with is that this book really made me want to learn more about like him in general. Like I want to now read some nonfiction about Vincent van Gogh's life and just his art and where he was. Like there were things in here like the fact that he lived in a coal mining town as an evangelist for quite a few years of his life that I never knew and that I feel like you don't often hear about. I also learned a lot about the progression of his artwork. So I don't feel like this book was just about him. I feel like there was a lot of this book that was kind of like an art education. At the end of the day, I rated this book a 4 stars, and I'd really recommend it to anyone who's interested in Van Gogh's life, interested in the Impressionist period with artists, because he knew a lot of Impressionists. And yeah, and it made me look up their artwork. Speaking of which, along with that book, there was another book that I thought I would maybe look at, but didn't realize I would explore as much as I did. And that book is Van Gogh, The Complete Paintings. This is a book that is largely just as it says, all of his complete paintings are in here. And there are some discussion of time period. The nice thing about reading it with Lust for Life is that in Lust for Life, Irving Stone breaks up Vincent van Gogh's life into the various parts of Europe that he lived in and where he was living at the time that he was doing these works of art, and situations were going on in his life. And these paintings are also broken up by time period and where he was living. So it made it very easy for me to find artwork that was mentioned in the book in this book. I did in here kind of tab one of my favorite pieces of artwork, but also ones that I found were definitely mentioned in the book. Knowing that he started in a time period where it was very popular to sort of paint with gravy, as it was kind of referred to in the book, to later in life, moving on to just amazing sun drenched color. And it had never occurred to me that he basically, as an artist, more so than even just learning how to mix colors, had to learn how to break free of the idea that there shouldn't be color in his painting. And so that was just a side of him that I never knew, because if you're like me, when you think of Vincent van Gogh, you think of the amazing, beautiful colors in his artwork. I would highly recommend this book if you like his artwork. Oh, and This is the postman, who's one of my absolute favorite portraits. So, and it mentions in the book his relationship with the postman. So that book, this book, like there were wins for me for this month. I would not say that Lust for Life is a perfect book. I don't know honestly that I would ever reread it, but it's definitely a book that I'm holding on to because I would definitely like to go back to my favorite parts and to the parts where he talks about the paintings. So I guess in that sense I would reread it. Is this actually a 5 star for me? No, no, I don't think so. I'll let you know at the end of the year. So the next book that I read after that, because I just needed a cheap, fast win, was an audiobook. I listened to Peter Pan by JM Barrie. And I have to admit that listening to this on audiobook gave me a conflict of feelings because one of the things that I've noticed about audiobooks is they're not always great at mentioning whether or not they're abridged. And unfortunately, it wasn't until I was almost at the end of the audiobook of Peter Pan that I realized that a very large portion of the book was being abridged. Sometimes it was sentences, sometimes it was paragraphs, sometimes it was whole pages, and there was nothing on there that would have led me to understand that, and there was no clear reasoning as to why they abridged what they did. I did like the story that the audiobook told. I thought it was very interesting, slightly different. There are slightly different emphases than in Peter Pan, like the Disney movie. And so that was interesting to see, and it is an enjoyable story overall. There's definitely some interesting time period related issues that come up. So I will probably at some point reread Peter Pan and just purely do a physical edition of it. But for now, this is just a 3 star book for me. And one day, if I have grandchildren, I will probably read this book to them. And the third and final book that I finished was Illborn by Daniel T. Jackson. Illborn, in general, is about 4 different characters who are, at the start of the book, all 17 or 18, and they're suddenly finding that they're having these dreams. Now, these 4 characters don't live anywhere near each other, but they are all suddenly having the same dreams over and over each night. And in those dreams, they see 4 other people, and it's a very weird vision where they're coming to this glowing gate and they don't understand what it is, and they almost immediately forget the dream upon waking up. But as they continue about their lives and these dreams don't go away, they also all start to discover that they have unusual abilities or powers. And over the course of the Book of Illborn, they living in sort of a medieval Europe equivalent, I would say, they discover that their powers that they have are actually forbidden. This is set in a very religious time period where there is one overarching religion that has, you know, done crusades against other people groups on a different continent. They're all, for the most part, on one continent, and they are all under this one, you know, state-based or country-based religion, even though there's multiple countries, and that the religion apparently has very strong views about heretics and heresy. And part of that, as they discover, happens to do with supernatural abilities or something. So there's a lot of mystery in this book surrounding exactly what their powers are, whether they are good or bad, and the conflict that's involved because there seem to be some people who know more about their powers than they do. And so the book just covers them sort of exploring what their destiny is, trying to figure out these dreams, exploring the limits and growing in their supernatural abilities, while at the same time trying to figure out what to do with the fact that these are not abilities that are exactly smiled upon. It is a very interesting setting that it is placed in. Like I said, it very much reminded me of medieval Europe, and I think that's intentional. So the things that I thought were really well done in this book overall were the setting, the characterization, the writing, which was very clear and easy to read, and the pacing of the book as a whole. I think it took a little too long for the characters to develop, and it left the plot of the actual story sort of feeling like, what is the purpose of this and where is this going? And I feel like it took a little too long to get anywhere. And by the end of the book one, I also didn't feel like we were where we should have been at that point. That said, I'm not a huge fan of series, so that might just be my own personal bias. I did end up giving this book a 4 star rating, however. I thought it was really good and really well done. I have personally no intentions of reading book two, and personally, I would have needed this book to go further for me, like plot wise, for me to have wanted to go to book two. I would recommend this book to anybody who likes fantasy series, who enjoys the chosen one trope, who enjoys having multiple points of views and different characters to go through, and who also likes books that start out with a lot of character development where you get to know your characters really well and maybe don't know a lot about the magic system yet, because there is some sort of magic or supernatural powers that each of the characters in this book have, and they're all slightly different. So that's also an interesting part of this book. But anyway, this is book one in the Illborn saga, so pick it up if it sounds like something you might be interested in. It's a really fast read, and I'd say it's very consistent throughout. So if you like the first couple of chapters, you'll probably enjoy the entire thing. Okay, so that's pretty much all I have to say about the books that I finished this week. I'll real quickly go over what I am currently reading, and then I have something special to discuss in terms of what's coming up next. So I am currently reading for my family book club, Cassandra at the Wedding by Dorothy Baker. And so far, this is going really good. We're all really enjoying this. There are definitely some things in the book that we're curious, like how they're going to work out and what's really happening. It's a pretty short book, and we're about maybe a quarter of the way into it. We'll probably be about at least halfway through by the end of this next week. And yeah, I'm intrigued. It reads very differently and has a very different tone than what I was expecting. I think I was expecting it to be a little bit more on the contemporary side of fiction, but it's definitely a little bit more on the literary side, which is fine. And it's funny because a couple of us has said that this book, and I think the narration of this book reminds us of something else we've read in our family book club, but we can't figure out what. I am predominantly listening to this book on audiobook, and that seems to be serving me pretty well, and it's been an interesting read. It is definitely about the characters. It's a pretty slow moving plot, which I kind of knew. I believe the entire book just happens over the course of a couple of days with these sisters leading up to, the parent wedding. So it'll be interesting to see how this continues to move forward and what my thoughts will be on it in the end. In addition to Cassandra at the Wedding, I am also continuing to read 10 pages of the Tales, the Arabian Nights, every day, and that is still going well. Though I have to admit, this past week, I've kind of been in this section that I'm a little like, yeah, 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 yeah. And all it is that I'm in the middle of a story, which up to this point has been interesting in and of itself, has had a couple of embedded narratives that I've enjoyed, but I'm in this very long section where I just got through a whole bunch of women coming forth, and all they're doing is sharing their wisdom and knowledge, and proving that they're, well informed about the wisdom of the time. I am finally through that part. There is sort of a conflict that is happening between the Christians and the Muslims in the book right now, which is, interesting. But again, it's focused a lot on like just the minute little like battle happenings, and there's supposedly some deceptive things going on in the background, but I'm not finding them that deceiving. So I'm kind of hoping she'll finish this story sometime soon. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is that if I was the king at this moment, I'd be like, this might be like your last night. Anyway, overall, I'm still enjoying it, but I'm glad we are moving on from that section soon. And the final book that I am currently reading is The Mysteries of Paris by Eugene Sue. And I am buddy reading this with Stormy at Storm Reads. And we have changed what we are doing, and we are now reading two chapters of this each day. So I'm hoping to be done with book one and book two by the end of this month, but we'll see how that plays out. Um, Anyway, we're both, fairly well enjoying the story. We realized after reading book one for almost a week at one chapter a day that that was maybe a bit too slow because we wanted just a little bit more each day. Part of that is because it's serially written, and so like each chapter leaves you on a cliffhanger. But we also realized that we think part of that was just we actually just wanted to read a little bit more each day. So we're now at two chapters a day, and that does feel a little bit better. It's definitely still building up the characters, still building up the intrigue. We've now met, I think, most of our main characters, and we're still trying to figure out who exactly they are, what they're after, what they're doing, where they are, and that kind of thing. So, at least I can say that I really want to know more. So, this has turned out to be, I think, a very easy book to read. Um, There's not a lot of confusing cultural references. The few that are have been either explained by Eugene Sue himself, or there's an extra footnote from the editor of this version. So I am enjoying the Mysteries of Paris and can't wait to continue reading that. Um, so that said, if you haven't noticed, all three of the books that I am currently reading are books that basically I'm just reading a few pages of each day. And I do have some other buddy reads coming up, but I've decided that I need to do something totally different in order to pick the next book that I'm truly going to. So I have two books left that are books that I need to read as part of like buddy reads, that kind of thing. And that includes A Long Fatal Love Chase and Cloud Atlas. But I have particular days that I'm reading these on. And other than these books, I only have the other buddy reads or book club reads that I'm sort of spreading out over the course of the month. So I need another book. I do have a couple on my TBR that I haven't actually gotten to yet, which is the Satanic Verses and Black Tulip. But I've gotten to the point where I realize I'm really kind of in an extreme mood reading point, and I want to be able to pick out my books a little more frequently. Okay, so I've probably already mentioned that I need to play Bailey's TBR game again. Joke's on me. So it's time for another round because, yeah, it was a wreck. I think I'm like basically in a reading slump. Let me just say it out loud. So I will be using Bailey's game board again, which I will put up here on the screen. And I will also be using my gigantic deck of cards, which is upside down. So let me go ahead and pull some books and hope that I can find something I feel like reading. You know, you would say, Nicole, at this point, just pull off your shelf what you feel like reading, but that's the problem for me. I don't know what I feel like reading, other than maybe something fast paced. Anyway, I gotta be. Okay, so this is a beast card. Now, the last time, let me pull up the board for you. The last time I was playing, I left off on repeat author. And what the B card is going to mean in my game is it's going to be similar to the number seven. Number seven would have me move forward halfway across the board. Um, the B is going to stand for backwards. And so I'm going to have to move halfway backwards across the board. And the entire intent is to make me further away from the end. So this is one of the few cards where if I move backwards, I can't move backwards past the beginning. So the furthest back I can go, even if it's not quite halfway, is all the way back to start. And in this case, because I'm only halfway across the side of the board, going halfway back brings me back to start. So I get another random number, reread random number. Let me go and draw a random number. And you know what? I'm going to keep this simple. I'm just going to cut the deck, and that's going to give me a random number because I have 1 through 26. So I guess it's only going to give me the first 11, but whatever. So cut the deck, just like I said, number 11. All right, let me go see what number 11 is up here on my shelf, and I will tell you what random number reread I'm doing. Okay, so I think I'm happy with this choice, though this really could backfire on me. So the 11th book on my shelf that would be a reread is The Portrait of a Lady by Henry James. And yes, it's a used copy, and sorry about the whole sticker issue. Um, I'm pretty sure this is a reread and that I read this in college. However, I always get this and D.H. Lawrence's Lady Chatterley's Lover mixed up because the covers, for some reason, seem very similar to me, even though the stories themselves are pretty different. But I'm pretty sure this is the correct book. The Portrait of a Lady is about a young lady who basically makes a major decision in her life while she's traveling through Europe and has to learn to live with the consequences of that. It explores themes of autonomy and fate and independence, and I'm really looking forward to it if it's the book that I think it is. If it's not, hopefully I'll like it anyway. Anyway, that's my first draw and my first book pick. Maybe it'll rest right there. Here, I'll put it there so it's in shot for you. Okay, let's go ahead and draw another card and see what happens on my third draw. Okay. Well, I can't go back any further. So I get another random number reread. All right. Well, the last time it worked, and I'll just start from where I'm at. So at least I go through the rest of the bookshelves. So I was in my P section. I know where I pulled this book. So from there, I need to count. Well, ace is usually a one. So I'll count one. So the very next, oh, okay. I like how this worked out. I'll go grab the book. Okay. I should also mention that I thought about making the B, which is the beast card, stand for a mammoth book. I'm glad I didn't do that. Anyway, so the very next book that was a reread for me is The Phantom Tollbooth. This was one of my favorite books as a child. And I don't typically reread books from my childhood unless I'm reading them to a child. And then one of my volunteers that interned for me told me that the audiobook of this is done by a very well-known actor. And as soon as she told me that, I was like, I have to listen to that because this happened to also be her favorite book. So, anyway, I will put the actor up on the screen so that you know who I'm talking about. And hopefully that makes you interested in hearing this book read. If you don't know anything about the fantasy toll booth, that's basically what it is. The Phantom Toll Booth. It takes place when Milo. Well, one, it's a fantasy novel. And what happens is Milo, this young man, he one day in his extreme boredom pretends to ride around in his little car and he comes across a toll booth and he pays the toll and he goes through and enters into a really bizarre magical land. This is such an awesome story and I can't wait to listen to the audiobook. So I feel like if nothing else, this is going to be a good time. I also have a blue theme going on over here. Okay, my third and final book pick, which is hopefully a book I get to pick and not just another random choice. Ah, okay, a five. Okay, let's see where that gets me on the board. So if I move five, okay, that gets me a repeat author. I guess that's a good thing. I'm not mad about it. Oh, I know exactly what I'm going to pick. Oh, yes, this is going to be the. Yes, okay, okay, let me go get it. Okay, things are turning around. It's looking brighter in my mind. My repeat author is Wilkie Collins and The Woman in White. So I have had a really good time reading books by Wilkie Collins this year. The Woman in White is one of the last two books that I want to read before I get to Drood, which you can see Drood just popping up right there behind me. And so this is part of a major book project that I have going on. I'm excited. So my next three books for my draws, which didn't get me virtually anywhere on the board, but that's okay. I will be reading The Portrait of a Lady by Henry James, The Phantom Tollbooth, and The Woman in White. And I won't play this book again until I finish all three of these. And yeah, it might take me some time, but there are three books that I'm really excited to read and I really think I'm going to enjoy. So I kind of don't mind how long it takes me to get through this. I say that now. Editing me may quote me later. Anyway, this has gotten kind of long, and I know I'm putting it in the middle of another video, so let's go back. That's it for today. I have shown you everything that I am currently reading for buddy reads. I've shown you my upcoming buddy reads, and I've also talked about the three books that I will now be reading as part of the Jokes on Me game. So, yeah, that's it. I hope you have a great week, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.